Good morning. Thanks for being here. I'm Stephen Romo in for Joe in Savannah today. And we begin with the bone-chilling temperatures set to grip the Rockies and northern plains today, right on the heels of a winter storm that swept eastward across the south over the weekend. At least 9 people are dead in Kentucky. Another died in Georgia after torrential rain triggered severe flooding. More than 1,000 people had to be rescued from rising waters. And this morning, tens of thousands remain without power. Meanwhile, multiple tornadoes were reported in Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana. In the Northeast, hundreds of flights were canceled because of sleet and heavy snowfall, with more snow potentially on the way. We have full team coverage with meteorologist Tevin Wooten standing by with the latest forecast. But first, let's go to NBC News correspondent Kathy Park in Kentucky for more on the deadly flooding.
Hey, Stephen, good morning to you. Yeah, parts of the South are now in recovery mode after a weekend of wild weather. Here in Kentucky, we saw up to 6 inches of rain, and that caused rivers and creeks to overflow. Behind me, you're taking a look at the North Fork of the Kentucky River, and it is still running pretty high this morning. The governor reported that all counties in the state were impacted by these storms, and there were over 1,000 rescues this weekend. Unfortunately, he also reported at least 9 fatalities. Most of these tragedies happened as people were driving into the high waters. Meanwhile, it wasn't just Kentucky, but Tennessee also saw some significant flooding as well. In Obion County, Tennessee, a levee broke and flooded out entire neighborhoods. And also, we tracked a destructive tornado in Alabama as well. Meanwhile, up north, several inches of snow fell in portions of New England. And this morning, hundreds of thousands of customers in the mid-Atlantic and throughout the Northeast are without power this morning. Now, the cold air, that Arctic air, is settling in starting tomorrow.
Oof, mess out there. Kathy, thanks so much. Now let's bring in NBC meteorologist Tevin Wooten. He's got the latest on the flooding and another round of vicious winter weather, Tevin.
Yes, Stephen, no rest for the winter storm weary. In terms of the flooding, the good news is the strong storms have departed. The bad news is the water's still adding up in several locations across the Bluegrass State, between Louisville and even Pikeville and Somerset as well. That's where we still have flood warnings today. And check out all of these dots. These are river gauges that are at the very least in some sort of minor or moderate flood stage. There is one, though, to the north and east of Somerset that is in major flood stage. So that water should start to go down at about 1 to 2 in the afternoon today. Again, the good news is the strong storms are done, but even already across the Intermountain West and portions of the Rockies, a new winter storm is developing. And because of those gusty winds today, we actually have lake effect snow across upstate New York. Wind alerts are posted for some 60 million Americans between New Jersey, New York State, and New England, where gusts today will surpass 50 miles an hour in several spots. And why is that bad? Well, yesterday we actually had a pretty potent winter storm across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Vermont, and even Connecticut, too, with sleet, snow, and ice. So those gusty winds today may bring in additional power outages as trees and power lines start to come down. Cold Arctic air is pouring in from much of the nation's midsection today. Some 55 million folks impacted by this. And check out the dangerous cold that's already in store right now across the Twin Cities. As the air temperature reads -11, it feels like -36. And the cold doesn't stop across the northern tier. It moves, oozes like molasses down south across Tulsa, St. Louis, where the wind chill is 3 and in the single digits. And even Music City, you're probably singing the blues there. 13 for a wind chill today across Middle Tennessee. Tomorrow, the cold expands even more between Omaha, St. Louis, Memphis, and across the Mid-South with an air temperature of 41 degrees. That's about 15 degrees below normal for this time of year, and still no rest in terms of the cold. It expands even more now between New York, upstate New York through the Carolinas, or across Raleigh, Durham, and even into Charlotte, too. Atlanta likely to have 40s for Thursday's high temperature. And look at this, North Texas here. We're talking about temperatures flirting, or it feels like temperatures flirting with freezing on Wednesday and Thursday. There is a new winter storm developing. This starts out across the Pacific Northwest, specifically through places like Denver and the Front Range of the Rockies. It taps into some milder air as the storm moves eastbound. So you're drawing in moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, which tends to be a bit more potent. So you see that purple there? That is ice, and we do not like ice, especially across the south through northwestern Arkansas and the Ozarks, looking at not only ice, but some 6 to maybe 12 inches of snowfall between now and Wednesday. By Wednesday evening, the good news is the storm is on the move. It should be across the mid-Atlantic states at that point and also across the Carolinas with more snow. Most of this storm system should exit out by the end of the day Wednesday and into Thursday morning. A near miss, we think, for portions of New England. How much snow are we talking about? Check this out. In southwestern Missouri, some 6 to 12 inches of snowfall. So keep the heavy coats out, the snow shovels, and the snow blowers as well. Even an inch of snowfall for Memphis is enough to cause some travel impacts on Wednesday and Thursday. Thursday night, we're still watching for higher amounts of snowfall across the Virginia coast through Norfolk and portions of the DMV. So even though we spring forwards, even in a couple of weeks, Mother Nature is sort of going back, if you will.
I started tricking myself into thinking we were almost to spring, but I was very wrong.
Me too, and I'm the meteorologist.
All right, Tevin, thanks so much.
Of course.
Well, President Trump is still in Florida this morning as part of the weekend he spent watching the Daytona 500. His motorcade drove a lap around the track of the Daytona International Speedway ahead of the race yesterday. This was Mr. Trump's second appearance at the Daytona 500 as president. Meanwhile, his administration is still grinding away. They continue to make those broad cuts in the federal workforce, and layoffs continue. Meanwhile, Elon Musk, who has the Department of Government Efficiency, we've learned that an employee of the IRS who's affiliated with that department is expected to get access to an IRS system that contains sensitive taxpayer information. That's according to an administration official. NBC News White House correspondent Aaron Gilchrist joins us now with the latest on this. Aaron, good morning to you. So let's start off with that DOGE-affiliated IRS employee who's expected to try to get access to the sensitive IRS systems. What do we know about that, and what are the concerns there?
Well, as you said, this is an IRS employee who is working with Musk's office, and they're expected to seek access to this IRS system. It's the Integrated Data Retrieval System, according to an administration official. And this system that we're talking about here lets IRS employees access taxpayer accounts, as you mentioned. This is a system that contains information like taxpayer individual master files, identification numbers, retirement accounts information, also details about pending adoptions, for example. It can also be used to generate notices, to generate collection documents. That's according to the IRS website. Now, the official we heard from said that the employee was carrying out the DOGE mission and was acting legally and with the appropriate security clearances, or will be acting with those clearances. A White House spokesperson told us that it takes direct access to the system to identify waste, fraud, and abuse that we've heard the Trump administration talk so often about, Stephen, and accessing that information will then allow them to fix these issues.
A lot of concern over that, Aaron. Also a lot of concern over air travel safety. That's been in the spotlight for this administration as well, after those deadly plane crashes we saw last month in Washington and then in Philadelphia. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy posted on X last night that members of the Elon Musk SpaceX team will visit the Air Traffic Control System Command Center in Virginia later today. So what do we know about the purpose behind that visit?
Yeah, Stephen, Secretary Duffy says that the purpose here is to get a firsthand look at the current system, to learn some of the concerns air traffic controllers have about their current tools, and to figure out a way to make the system better, more modern, safer. He said that in his post. He went on to say that he does still also invite input from all developers and all companies that want to help in that mission of modernizing the system. At the same time, we did learn over the weekend from the Professional Aviation Safety Specialists Union. They posted on X that several hundred of their members, FAA and probationary employees, were among thousands of people who were fired late last week. And the union says that that move is going to increase workloads. It's going to put more responsibilities, new responsibilities on workers who are already stretched thin in that agency that doesn't have enough employees. And this, of course, came after the administration said that air traffic controllers and TSA officers would not be allowed to take that buyout offer that the administration put out last month, which ended week before last, Stephen.
Yeah, a lot to keep track of, a lot of ongoing changes there. And on that front, Aaron, we were talking about the Trump administration's efforts to shrink the federal workforce. It was the CDC's turn over the weekend. We know that hundreds of employees lost their job there. What should we know in particular about these layoffs?
So, Stephen, two sources told our team that the Trump administration terminated, as you said, hundreds of CDC employees over the weekend. This was on Saturday, and that includes workers who are responsible for training public health lab staffers, people who are supporting the response efforts for outbreaks around the country, around the world for that matter. And there's one staffer who received a termination letter who told us they were concerned that this move is going to cut disease detection work at the agency. We saw some of these emails come out in different places. The termination emails, in this case, cited poor performance as the reason for the firings. At the same time, many of those who were dismissed have excellent performance reviews, according to a mid-level CDC official. And as I said, we saw a similar termination email go out to employees at the Department of Transportation over the weekend. Those two facts, the firing for cause, it seems, Stephen, with the combination of the exceptional rating, really leaving some people to scratch their heads, and others who not yet received such emails to worry about whether or when they'll get one.
Yeah, a lot of question marks there and a lot of concern when we see these headlines about bird flu and all these other potential illnesses that still need to be tracked. All right, Aaron Gilchrist, a lot of moving targets. Thanks for keeping track of that for us. Well, even in the first few weeks of the second Trump administration, Elon Musk and that newly created Department of Government Efficiency have taken an aggressive approach in trying to overhaul programs and spending within the federal government. Well, this morning, the courts are pushing back against those sweeping cuts that Musk is making. NBC News White House correspondent Yamiche Alcindor has the details.
We've had a great discussion. Terrific.
An extraordinary scene playing out in the Oval Office this week. The world's richest man standing alongside the world's most powerful one, promising to reshape the American government as we know it.
A lot of times that, people that don't get what they voted for, but in this presidency, they are going to get what they voted for. And that's what democracy is all about.
And what the people want, Musk says, is to drastically slim down the federal government.
We're going to find billions, hundreds of billions of dollars of fraud and abuse.
Since President Trump took office, Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, have moved at lightning speed, firing thousands of employees, with Musk warning more could follow.
We do need to delete entire agencies.
And already in recent weeks, 75,000 federal workers have taken buyouts, though that's shy of the 100 to 200,000 workers the White House said it hoped would resign. The Trump administration now telling federal agencies to fire probationary employees who typically have only been with the government a year or two. The end goal? To cut $2 trillion from the annual federal budget. Federal employees don't cost the government anywhere close to that figure.
We need to be very concerned about these tech billionaires merging with the state, the government, and basically taking over the government.
Elon Musk has got to go!
But critics say Trump and Musk are moving too fast.
They're just taking things down. And what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to put them back together again.
Elaine Kmark is a former Clinton administration official who oversaw large-scale cuts to federal spending in the 1990s.
It took you 8 years to cut something like 400,000 jobs. Elon Musk and President Trump are trying to cut something like 200,000 jobs in less than a month.
Well, there's a simple reason for that. We cut fat, not muscle. We targeted functions that we didn't think were needed anymore. And we made sure that we had technology ready to take the place of those jobs.
The DOGE cuts are already facing a number of legal challenges.
We fight for you!
There could definitely be conflicts of interest for Elon Musk, most notably because he hasn't gone through the normal process for becoming a government employee.
Go, Soraya.
Musk's company, SpaceX, has billions in contracts with the U.S. government, ferrying astronauts and satellites to space, while his electric car company, Tesla, has faced numerous federal investigations. But critics say it could take years for any legal challenges to play out in court.
We're in the middle of a constitutional crisis. Eventually, this will reach the Supreme Court. And I hope the court does the right thing before we get to the next problem. And the next problem is things blowing up in our faces.
The Silicon Valley mantra, move fast and break things, now playing out in real time inside the federal government.
Yamiche Alcindor with that story. Meanwhile, top American officials are expected to meet in Saudi Arabia this week with Russian counterparts. It's all an effort to lay the groundwork to end the war in Ukraine. In a wide-ranging interview, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky sat down exclusively with NBC's Meet the Press moderator Kristen Welker to talk about his relationship with the president and whether he thinks President Trump can help stop the war.
Hello there, Stephen. This week on Meet the Press, I spoke to Ukrainian President Zelensky about what he would say to Russian President Putin if he were sitting across from him at a negotiating table. Do you think President Trump is negotiating in good faith?
I hope so. I hope so. Yes, I count on it. I count on it very much. I will never accept any decisions between the United States and Russia about Ukraine. Never. And our people, never. And our adults and children and everybody. It can't be so. This is the war in Ukraine against us, and it's our human losses. And we are thankful for all the support, unity between USA, in USA, around Ukraine support, bipartisan unity, bipartisan support. We're thankful for all of this, but there is no any leader in the world who can really make a deal with Putin without us. Of course, I want to have real meeting, productive, without just words, with a concrete steps, and to hear us, to hear President Trump, to make common plan, and to share it with allies, then with Russians, and stop this war.
Is it true that you told President Trump during that phone call that Putin is only pretending to want peace because he is afraid of Mr. Trump?
Yes. Yes, I said that he's a liar. And he said, I think that my feeling, he said, that he's ready for peace negotiations. And I said to him, no, he's a liar. He doesn't want any peace. But I think he's really a little bit scared about the President Trump. And I think the president has this chance and he's strong. And I think that really he can push Putin to peace negotiations. Yes, I think so. I need security guarantees. Words are not enough. Words cost nothing with Putin. Yes, that's why for me it's very important, strong security guarantees. Otherwise, when he will come back, so he can occupy us.
Given what you're saying, are you willing to negotiate with Vladimir Putin face to face?
Together, United States, Europe, Ukraine, and Russia. Yes, because without Russians we can't stop for today. We can't stop this war. We can't stop Putin without his decision, because he's on our territory.
If you were sitting across from Vladimir Putin right now, instead of me, what would you say to him?
I will speak. I will speak. No, it's not about emotions. It's about how to stop him. So for me, he is a killer, and he will never change. And that's why this is the dialogue with the terrorist. This is a dialogue with a killer. I don't have such power, enough power to push him out. That's why I have to speak about it. So our allies can give me such power to push him out, but our allies decided to make a deal with Putin. But what can I say? I'm ready. Of course, we don't want, to lose our people. And if it can be so in diplomacy to stop this war, so of course we are ready. Of course we'll be happy with the peace.
You can see my full interview and a lot more at MeetThePress.com. You can also get more Meet the Press here on NBC News Now every weekday at 4 p.m.
We'll be watching. Kristen, thanks so much. And we have a former U.S. Ambassador to NATO, Kurt Volker, standing by for more. But first, let's get the latest on the war in Ukraine with NBC News international correspondent Molly Hunter, who's live for us in London. Molly, good morning to you. So Secretary of State Marco Rubio got to Saudi Arabia this morning. What's the latest on the talks that are set to take place there, and where does Ukraine fit into them?
Stephen, good morning. And you just heard from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky that certainly Ukraine needs to fit into any negotiations, and we have no sense and no indication that Ukraine is going to be present at these talks happening in Saudi Arabia. What we know from the State Department is that Secretary of State Marco Rubio arrived just about an hour ago, touched down blue skies in Riyadh. White House National Security Advisor Mike Waltz and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff are also accompanying Rubio on this. They will meet with a Russian delegation led by Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov starting tomorrow. What exactly the agenda is, we do not have any details, Stephen. No European leaders, no Ukrainian leaders at the table, at least at our understanding at this time. Now, two U.S. officials tell NBC News that the intention is there will be kind of a bilateral with Russia, which this looks like happening in Saudi Arabia, then a bilateral with Ukrainian leaders, and then they get the two sides together. But European leaders, and we heard a lot from European leaders at the end of last week at the Munich Security Conference over the weekend, feel completely left out as the U.S. sets the tone and the pace of these pre-negotiations. Now, Secretary of State Marco Rubio was speaking with CBS yesterday. Take a quick listen because he made a point that some of his colleagues in the administration didn't.
He thinks this war needs to end. And if he sees an opportunity to end it, which is what he's looking for, whether there is an opportunity or not, we're going to pursue it. Ultimately, it will reach a point when if it's real negotiations, and we're not there yet, but if that were to happen, Ukraine will have to be involved because they're the one that were invaded. And the Europeans will have to be involved because they have sanctions on Putin and Russia as well.
So Ukraine has to be at the table. Europe has to be at the table, according to Secretary of State. Neither have been invited to these talks or these pre-negotiations, perhaps in Riyadh. Stephen?
Molly, talking about Europe being shut out of this, obviously Ukraine feels shut out of this as well. But do European leaders have any strategy that we know of to come up with their own plans or to try to insert themselves into the U.S. and Russia's talks?
There are ongoing, I should say, discussions happening right now in Paris today. After last week and over the weekend, European leaders got together realizing they did need to kind of speak without the U.S. and come up with an action plan of sorts. So in Paris, President Emmanuel Macron has invited European leaders, NATO representatives, EU representatives. We know UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer will be there. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz will be there. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk and other leaders from Europe. The goal, as I mentioned, come up with an action plan as the U.S. charges ahead here, but also to have real conversations about security guarantees. Because the security guarantees, and you heard President Zelensky speak about this in his interview with Kristen Welker, will fall to Europe either individually to countries or in the form of a future NATO membership for Ukraine. So that's all happening in Paris. We've got the U.S. and Russia all in Saudi Arabia, and we will keep you posted on what we learn from both of those places.
Yeah, a lot of moving targets as well here. Molly, thanks so much for that. Ambassador Volker, let's get your perspective here. On Friday, Vice President J.D. Vance took the opportunity to criticize Europe for censoring right-wing views and for its immigration policies instead of really focusing on the war in Ukraine. So how big of a shift is this for U.S. foreign policy, and how much of an ally do you think these NATO countries still view the U.S.?
Well, I was there in Munich for the speech and observing some of the reaction. Vice President Vance gave a speech that was more political and philosophical about democracy in the West. And of course, that's seen from a MAGA perspective in contrast to a woke or progressive perspective. And we've gone through that political battle in the U.S. over the past several years. And Europe has a version of that as well, with its own far-right parties and its own establishment parties. And the Europeans didn't appreciate Vice President Vance pushing them on this, especially 1 week before the German election. So there was a lot of frustration and upset over that. And they were also surprised that he didn't really talk much about foreign policy or national security at this conference, which is convened for the purpose of talking about that. But that being said, I wasn't really surprised that that's where Vance went. That's his political makeup. That's where he's coming from. What he's lived through for the past many years. And at the same time, he's not the one calling the shots on foreign policy and national security. That's President Trump. And it would have been odd, I think, for him to be giving a foreign policy message in Munich while President Trump is back in Washington, calling Putin, calling Zelensky, setting up meetings in Saudi Arabia and so forth.
Yeah, President Trump as well wanted to ask you about this. He's threatened to pull out of NATO before. So when you look at how the new administration is going, sometimes sidelining its allies, reestablishing these direct talks with Russia, we also know the U.S. has withdrawn from the World Health Organization, which Trump has also threatened. When you hear all this together, for you, does it call into question whether or not the United States will continue to be a member of NATO?
Not at all. President Trump himself has said many times the purpose of this is to get our allies to do their share. He talks about, oh, the U.S. may not be there, we may pull out, as a threat in order to get the allies to spend more, in order to strengthen European security. And he did this in his first term when only 3 countries were spending 2% of GDP on defense. That number is now 23 of the European allies. And he wants them to spend even more because the threats are greater now from Russia. There's an active war. So he's pushing them and pushing them. And I would just note, too, that Marco Rubio was the senator who sponsored legislation in the Senate that says it would require a Senate vote for the U.S. to pull out. And I don't think it's President Trump's intention. And even if he did, I don't think it would actually go through.
Yeah, we'll keep tracking his rhetoric and seeing what he says on that front, as I know you will as well. Ambassador Volker, thanks so much for your insights. And back here in New York City, the decision on whether to drop federal charges against Mayor Eric Adams is now in the hands of a judge. A motion was filed to dismiss his corruption case after heightened pressure from the Trump administration. That move sparking a showdown between the Department of Justice and some of its own lawyers. Several prosecutors stepping down after refusing to sign off on dropping that case. All the details are outlined in a newly published article on NBCnews.com. And NBC News Justice reporter Ryan Riley is one of the people working on this story. He joins us now with more. Good morning, Ryan. So if you would walk us through this filing that the DOJ has submitted asking to drop the Adams case and what happens from here?
Yeah, and I'm going to overuse the word extraordinary in this entire endeavor because that's essentially what we're looking at here. This is a case where they had this was a well-supported case that was brought through a federal grand jury, and then when the Trump administration came in, you now have a motion to dismiss. And what's really unique about that motion here, first of all, is what led up to it. All of these firings, people resigning, or rather resignations, because people didn't think this was ethical. They didn't think this was correct, and they decided that they had reached their moral line, and that's where they were going to take their stand, and that's when they were going to resign. So you really had this sort of a revolt by the career staff. And, this is the Public Integrity Unit. So integrity is pretty critical to their mission and pretty core to who they are as humans. And I think that that's what we're seeing here. They see this as a corrupt deal. They see this as something that the Trump administration is trying to do to put pressure on an official who they believe is guilty of these crimes that they charged him with, and that had already been gone through the federal grand jury process. And a federal grand jury agreed that there was probable cause that Eric Adams had indeed committed these crimes. Of course, he has pleaded guilty, and he has said that he is not guilty of the crimes, but the evidence that they had brought forward was pretty strong. And now what you have in this motion is this sort of new theory that that this top DOJ official is floating, is that he can't do his job because of these charges, which is not normally how they go about deciding who is going to be charged. It's usually based on the evidence, not what their job is. That's not normally how you determine criminal charges. And I think that's why you had so many of these resignations, because people just couldn't put their name behind that and were willing to sacrifice their careers because they believed this was a corrupt deal.
Yeah, several resignations. It is surprising. I wanted to ask you specifically about Danielle Sassoon, the former acting U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, who's only been in that position since January 21st, I think, after Trump appointed her to it. She resigned. Do we know what she has said about the reason that she wanted to step down?
I would encourage people to really read the letter that she wrote here, laying out why she decided to step down in this case. Because what she said is that the number 2 acting official at the Justice Department laid out what she saw as an immoral, corrupt sort of deal. This idea that you're going to have this pressure that basically because he was in New York City mayor, because he's sort of cooperating now with the Trump administration, that we're going to drop these charges. And just to sort of like level set here, what we're talking about is a Democrat who was charged during a Democratic administration. And this was a Trump-chosen person to fill this role who has a long history who clerked for a very conservative Supreme Court justice. And so this isn't a case where it's someone, this was a case that was brought against a Democrat during a Democratic administration, but primarily it was driven by the facts and the law. That's what people inside of DOJ are saying. And now you have this case where they're trying to get rid of this case.
It is fascinating reporting. You should all check it out, NBCnews.com. Ryan Riley, thanks so much for breaking that down for us.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.